Gentlemen, apologies for the little bit of a delay. It's 8 a.m. I believe we can start our program. My name is Melvin Homo. I'm Director Research at the Central Bank, and I will be directing the proceedings for today. As per our culture, may we start with a word of prayer, and I will request Mr. Jede to pray for us. Thank you.
Can we close our eyes? I was hoping I wouldn't have to come up to the podium, but let's close our eyes to pray. Father, we thank you because you are God, and besides you there is no other God. Honor and majesty go before you, Most High God. We thank you this morning for a session such as this. You understand our country, you understand our budget, and we acknowledge that wisdom and understanding comes from you, Most High God. We ask for your wisdom, we ask for your understanding as we deliberate on the issues that are before us. We ask this in the name of our Lord and Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Jele. May I start by acknowledging the Honorable Finance Minister, the Governor of the Central Bank, Deputy Governor, CEOs present, Captains of Industry, fellow Central Bankers, I think even the media. I will say all protocol observed, just in case you Just a few housekeeping rules before we start. Restrooms are actually on when you exit and then you turn left, they're actually by the corner. And then in the unlikely event of a fire, we do have emergency exits on my left and also at the back and also at the front. So without wasting time, we can start with the program because we have a very short program during today. As we all know, this is the annual post-budget seminar, which is hosted by the governor. But the main objective of our engagement today is to give the minister an opportunity to engage the public, mainly in relation to one of the key national activities which actually happen every year, which is the annual budget statement. May I also acknowledge, I think we do have university students here. This is for you probably a practical lesson in economics, because you might have learned that economics is mainly about the allocation of scarce resources amongst limitless needs. So you can imagine the challenge that the Minister of Finance has if you look at what is available in the national purse and then all the requirements that we need as a nation. So I'm not going to give speeches, but we do have a program which is actually tight. We should be done by 10 a.m. So we will start by having welcome remarks from the governor, who will then also introduce the minister. Honorable Governor, may I invite you?
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. I really appreciate our Director Research, how he is so efficacious and very disciplined. He said we are late. We were about 30 seconds after 8. I just see the time there, it says we are starting at 8. So I like how much he's disciplined and already apologizing when we are 30 seconds late. Let's give a big hand of applause to our program director. Maybe some of you are not aware, he has taken the role of Director Research after many years as Director Financial Markets, and Skumbuzo Dlamini has taken the role of Director Financial Markets. Another one that I would like to communicate, Honorable Minister, is that our Director Financial Regulation is now Lungile Dlamini, who has swapped with Ms. Beverly Mavuso, who has now taken the role of Director Operations. So Lungile is now responsible for financial regulation. I'm saying this because I'm seeing the banks here, and thank you very much for coming. As the program director has already said, this is a very special moment, Minister, and we are very excited as a central bank to host this event and to have all of you here. So, Program Director, Honorable Minister, members of both Houses of Parliament here present, we acknowledge you most sincerely. Senior government officials, panelists, thank you for accepting our invitation and also squeezing from your very busy schedule. Captains of industry here present, we acknowledge you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor. Oh, now that I see Nati coming, let me also acknowledge members of the Monetary Policy Consultative Committee, and may I also acknowledge the members of the board. And may I also acknowledge those that are joining us virtually. We have made this session accessible via the social media platforms, and please do send your comments and questions at the appropriate time. We want to acknowledge you, those that are joining us virtually. It is with great honor and sincere pleasure that I welcome you all to the 2026 Post-Budget Seminar hosted by the Central Bank of Eswatini, Umjoli Wemaswati. This gathering represents not only our continued commitment to sound economic policy, but also a vital platform for dialogue, reflection, and forward-looking strategies. Honorable Minister, allow me to extend my deepest appreciation to you, and of course, to the Central Bank team and the Ministry of Finance team for dedicating their valuable time and resources to this important policy engagement. Your presence here, ladies and gentlemen, underscores the significance of today's discussion and reaffirms our shared responsibility to build a resilient and inclusive economy for Eswatini. Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of this seminar is to bring together stakeholders from all sectors of society to deliberate and exchange ideas regarding the 2026-2027 national budget. Our objective is to support the Ministry of Finance and the government to effectively implement the budget, ensuring that it leads to real improvements and better services for the people of Eswatini. We once again commend the Honorable Minister for graciously availing himself to deliver the keynote address on the highlights of his 2026-2027 budget speech. The Central Bank, together with the Ministry of Finance, recognizes the importance of providing a platform for professionals for both the public and private sectors to share their insights on the national budget. The seminar provides a platform for rigorous analysis, thoughtful debate, and visionary ideas. As we deliberate on the implications of the budget, let us do so with clarity, courage, and a spirit of unity, ensuring that the insights we generate today will guide towards sustainable growth and prosperity for all. The seminar also offers stakeholders valuable opportunity to exchange information in an open and collaborative environment. It is essential to emphasize that the objective of this forum is not to criticize the budget. There is a difference between criticism and critique. And I hope that the colleagues, the panelists, will gravitate towards critique than criticism. I'm pausing to make sure that it sinks. I actually lost where I was because I detoured now from what I was reading, where I will just now continue. But to encourage constructive dialogue and facilitate substantive contributions. Please be assured that the Honourable Minister will consider all issues raised during this seminar. Honourable Minister, it is my privilege to inform you that a distinguished group of panelists drawn from various spheres of society will share their considered perspectives and their respective sectors' sentiments on the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, the Minister of Finance delivered the national budget for 2026-2027 to Parliament on the 27th of January 2026 under the theme Agape Love, Love in Action for Economic Transformation. The budget was tabled as a pro-growth framework, firmly anchored on fiscal discipline and geared towards enhancing investments to transition the economy from stability to acceleration. At its core, the budget prioritizes increased capital expenditure to unlock long-term growth and boost productivity through infrastructure development, energy and water security, digitalization, and strengthening industrial capacity. The budget resonates with His Majesty's speech from the throne, delivered at the opening of the second session of the 13th Parliament, in which 2026 was declared a year of agape love, calling us as a nation to demonstrate the highest form of unconditional and sacrificial love. His Majesty the King reminded government to improve service delivery, uproot corruption, replenish medicines in hospitals, and prioritize the youth. He further emphasized the need for government to act with agency in pursuing the aspirations of our nation. Honourable Minister, it is unfortunate that the budget has been tabled amid a highly uncertain global environment, marked with escalating geopolitical tensions and increasing economic fragmentation. Ongoing conflicts and rising protectionist trade policies continue to undermine global and regional trade integration. I'm not sure, Honourable Minister, if your budget speech would have altered slightly or given a different narrative following the recent tension that we are seeing in the Middle East. And we know that it shall have consequences not only in the northern part or the western part of our world, but even in our sub-Saharan region, given our connectedness in terms of supply chains and, of course, the cost of fuel or oil, which might fuel inflation and bring a new dynamics in the landscape that we are facing going ahead. For Eswatini, these developments are not distant. They directly affect the lives of Eswatini. We must strengthen our resilience against external shocks. We must be intentional and strategic in deepening regional integration, leverage opportunities within the South African Development Community, SADC, and the African Continental Free Trade Area. Program Director, it is befitting that we do congratulate the Minister for Finance on his continued commitment to fiscal prudence. The successful rollout of the first phase of the Integrated Financial Management and Information System, UMSEBE IFMIS, will be transformative for the country, particularly through the digitalization of the planning and budgeting module. I know this is very close to the Minister's heart. This reform marks a decisive shift towards program-based budgeting, enhanced fiscal discipline, real-time expenditure monitoring, and strengthened accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge all of you to approach the discussions with honesty and a commitment to constructive feedback. Your thoughtful contributions will ensure that the ministry receives sound and practical advice on the effective implementation of the budget 2026-2027. In our role, Honorable Minister, as the advisor to government, we wish to assure you that we stand ready to provide the necessary support to the ministry. It is now indeed my honor, distinct honor, and privilege to invite the Honorable Minister to the podium to present the highlights of his budget. And Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. And good morning. Let's clap until the minister arrives, just to encourage. He rarely gets these kinds of encouragement. You know, when we're at Parliament, we're told we don't clap. So at the Central Bank, we do clap. Let's give him another big hand of applause. Thank you, Minister.
Very kind of you. Thank you so much, Governor. Really appreciate that. The amount of time that goes into this budget speech is really quite impressive. So I would normally just enjoy speaking off the cuff when I have the post-budget seminar, and so we'll go through it, and I'll just handle it that way. And if I can also, Program Director, if you don't mind, I see there's a half an hour for me now for my discussion, but if we could move things around, normally what you allow me to speak also after the panelists, just that I can, because there's often, things that they say and things that I can just sometimes bring into perspective or explain sometimes. So if I can have quarter of an hour now, I've got my timer on, of my half hour, then give me quarter of an hour after the panelists. I would appreciate that as a program director, if you don't mind. I think it works well that way. Governor, Central Bank, Deputy Governor, esteemed panelists that are here today. We see Business Eswatini is here. I think he might have gone for breakfast. We see the CEOs of the banks. Thank you very much. I'm not so sure when you guys get a chance to do your actual jobs. You're so often supporting me and helping me and being at the different programs and doing this kind of stuff. I really hope we don't overburden you with too much political engagements or these kind of things, but we do really appreciate private sector that are all here today, all the different institutions. Thank you so much for joining us here. We really appreciate it, and I really do understand that unpacking the budget, having a deeper feel for it is really important. What I also want to appreciate is at the budget speech day, we actually changed things around a bit where we actually invited many of you there, and many of you attended and honored that. I really appreciate it. There's a long haul to sit through on an uncomfortable seat in Parliament, but we appreciate you coming, appreciate the support that you give, and I do believe the more we can pull private sector into understanding the national budget, the more we can have you as part of the thinking as we go along and part of the process and just a deeper understanding of it, understanding the reason why government does things, I believe can be really beneficial both ways. So this morning I'm going to touch on a few of the highlights in the year that's coming, where our issues are, and then obviously give feedback once we have done. First of all, just I think that Governor touched on it, IFMIS. Really, I don't want anyone to underestimate the impact of what this integrated financial management system is going to do for us. As government, it's a paper-based system. Even every day I walk into my office, there's a pack like this, and it comes all day, and all day long it's going. But unfortunately, many offices it piles up, and this paper-based system really ends up being very inefficient because there's no tracking. No one knows exactly where is it now. Is it stuck with this person, stuck with that person, and it's just somewhere in the system. And even for payments, and that's where the main problem comes in. In payments, these things get stuck at somebody somewhere. And sometimes things happen, well, accusations are people sometimes want a favor for it to move along, or people want something to be able to process. Whereas IFMIS is going to transform that. It is a paperless system and it swings the pressure. So at the moment, it is extremely difficult getting it in because resistance to change is extremely high. And so don't underestimate the difficulty of trying to put a system like this into government. And luckily, we have our high level in the Ministry of Finance very supportive in trying to do this. But it has been an absolute nightmare trying to get IFMIS in and trying to get it accepted in the system, because it flips the thing around from it being in your control of when you do what you need to do to the system controlling you, the system showing on a very transparent basis, Wuti, this is now sitting at this person. After 2 days, it turns from red to yellow, and after another day from yellow to orange. And at some point, you start getting into trouble if you don't process your stuff in time. And so it really going to move things around. I believe it's going to transform government. So, but at the same time, there'll be glitches, and sometimes just the private sector understand that. From the 1st of April, I presume it's going to be a bit of chaos. We've done as much planning as we can. It's been 2 years in coming, so the amount of training, everything, but because it's such a transformative change, please bear with us if we have glitches. We unfortunately, there's already minister, we're going to have problems here, problems there. I'm saying, fine, let us push through the problems. Somehow in Eswatini, we're not that fantastic at planning ahead and structuring ahead. But when it comes to crisis management, we are surprisingly good at crisis management in Eswatini. So I'm going to rely on the fact that crisis management is going to make sure that IFMIS ultimately gets through. Some of the big things going on, the ICC completion. It is really going to be, I believe it's going to be transformative again. We're going to have a facility here. There's nothing like this on the continent, everyone in the room. It's like a palace inside. It has cost an absolute arm and a leg to build and to put in place. But I really believe that once we have the ICC up and running, we're going to have every person on the continent wanting to have come here and have taken selfies and have taken pictures inside this palace of an ICC. And so as much as it's been brutally expensive, it's now going to be done on the 25th of April. His Majesty the King is opening the ICC. And like I say, when it comes to crisis management, we're okay. So I'm confident it'll be finished on the 25th of April and that it'll be done. And so and another transformative one is the CMS. So at the moment, I know we just hear, CMS transformation, another parastatal. Please don't misunderstand what's going on here. At the moment, we've battled for many, many years to try and transform the Ministry of Health and to put a control system in place to control medicines from when it comes in all the way through to when it gets put into someone's hand, right? As we speak, there's no control system controlling medicines coming in. We've got a control system at CMS, we've got a control system at hospital level, but no control system in between. We've tried 3 times in the last 15 years to put that in place, and every time, for whatever reason, it doesn't get done. Because one's expecting the same people to put it in that somehow are comfortable with the status quo. And so by putting it now into a parastatal means you're taking it out of government's hands, putting it into a standalone entity, and they will have full control from medicines coming in all the way through till when it lands on someone's hands. And I'm only going to pay them when they can prove whose hands they've put it into. Meaning that it will be a financial self-controlled system, making sure that our medicines in the country, as His Majesty gave us very clear to say, get this problem solved. CMS transformation is going to do that. I really believe very early in this year we'll have the transformation done, and it will be transformative. Our salary review, I thought I'll touch on the salary review quickly. I know sometimes in the private sector there's a bit of disgruntlement to say, our wage bill, and sometimes one gets, in fact, one of these slides speak quite well to the wage bill. But what we need to understand, and that is that as Eswatini, when we did the review, the experts did show, obviously, and we just looked at, for instance, we looked at the SACU countries mainly. And we found that South Africa is up on a high level. Namibia, Botswana are also then below that. Let's talk of pay scales now. And if I talk of pay scales, if you look at it from the different categories of the pay scales, obviously it starts, and it's a line that does this. On a graph, South Africa's up there, Namibia, Botswana then come in behind. I can't remember, I think Botswana first, then Namibia. And below that is Eswatini and Lesotho. But what we found was the line was crossed, which means that Lesotho pays lower on the lower end of the pay scale, but higher on the higher end, and Eswatini was the lowest on the higher end of the pay scale, but higher than Lesotho on the lower end of the pay scale, which means that drivers, clerks get more in Eswatini, for instance, than in Lesotho, and the other way around on your directors, executives, politicians, that kind of place. And so what the pay scale did is just to actually correct that. So at the moment we've got very similar pay scales with with Lesotho, but we no longer have that kind of imbalance. And that's why I think the review was necessary, because even in my ministry, for instance, I was every now and again losing officials. I think the banks would take advantage of the low pay scales in the government and every now and again, employ people that were there, which is healthy and right, and it's great for people to move and to get that exposure. But we did need to do some kind of fix on the salary review. And you'll find that maybe if I see the slide coming up here, I'll maybe touch on it quickly when we get to it. Renewable energy, and we have a bomber in the room here, and just to appreciate what's going on in that space, there's definitely a lot of drive and change going on in energy. Again, it can be absolutely transformative. We put a special committee together as cabinet to look at different offers that we have on the table currently, and just engaging 10 of the top ones there to be able to do. And I really believe there's going to be a lot, even though we already have quite a bit of activity in that space, and it's going to drive economic growth and to push jobs and everything else in the country. There's going to be a whole lot more taking place in the near term. So we talk about Eswatini and our economy at the moment. At the moment, I suppose we're currently not doing too bad. We have come from an era of 2% growth to 3% growth over the last medium term, and we're entering a 5% kind of growth now. I know our numbers are showing it'll drop off at some point, but as government, we fully believe that we're going to be able to turn that around and that it won't drop off. It'll actually either continue where it is or even continue to climb. But again, just to highlight that we do have a few things going on in the country at the moment, which is going to have a negative impact, unfortunately. The number one is the sugar industry. The world sugar prices have just taken an absolute nosedive. Number one. Number two, we then have the exchange rate working the wrong way for exports. And so that impact is unfortunately going to have an economic impact on us. Fortunately, we have a very resilient, low-cost producing industry, so we're just going to hope that they can, number one, diversify as quickly as what they can. Secondly, be resilient and just weather the storm is what we're going to be hoping and trying to support where we can with this government. But we do need to understand profitability, unfortunately, is going to be heavily affected. Secondly, we have our anthracite industry, our biggest mining commodity in Eswatini, our biggest, in fact, we have the best anthracite reserve on the continent in Eswatini. And anthracite was actually being accelerated mining taking place in the anthracite space. And unfortunately, we were mainly supplying our anthracite into the smelting industry in South Africa, and mainly the ferrochrome industry. The ferrochrome industry virtually shut down overnight. We believe that South Africa has done something where Eskom has now reduced the price to the ferrochrome industry, which hopefully going to get them right and be able to get many of them started up again, and hopefully the industry grows. We need to obviously now in this case also diversify, we need to try and get exports going from the anthracite. We're having a few wash plants being put in, meaning that you have the export quality products coming out of the facilities. But that was a second quite big hit that we took. The third big hit we're taking is the foot and mouth. Unfortunately, it is having an impact on us. It is having a knock. So we have got three quite big shocks that are affecting us as we speak as a nation, and we need to try and again be resilient and to try and push through with it. So even though we have the growth, we do have these risks that are affecting us. I really want to take the opportunity to thank the governor and the central bank. Our reserves, I can see that they've absolutely owning the reserves issues that we have and doing everything that they can. The impact is showing, Governor. I want to appreciate you and your team for what you're managing to do there. I know there's so much out of your control. I fully understand that. But what is in your control, you guys are really trying to have an impact on. And it's definitely going in the right direction. And I want to just express that in front of everyone to appreciate the central bank's efforts in that place. Otherwise, then, I think I want to touch on corruption. At the moment in Eswatini, I'm not going to say there isn't corruption, but many people are constantly saying, your corruption is by far our biggest problem in Eswatini. And every time I say, where exactly is the corruption? Oh, no, it's here. who is being, when last have you been affected by that corruption? Well, I'm hearing from my friend, I'm hearing from this. Eswatini, I would really like us to, if we can unite on this. Number one, I think the problem isn't as big as what we say it is really now that I'm in government, because I was one of the loudest mouths when I was outside of government saying there's big corruption. Now that I'm in government, and I'm hoping to sort it all, try and do what I can to try and sort out the corruption. Number one, if it's there, it's very difficult to try and sort out. But secondly, it's not as deep as what one maybe would imagine when one's looking on the outside and hearing all the rumors. What my plea would be is, if ever one comes across it, in today's world, it is so simple to highlight corruption, to call it out, to record it, to somehow put it out there. If we can work together as a nation and use whatever means we have to name and shame, in Eswatini, an extremely powerful tool is shaming. Because we are such a small nation, we all know each other, everybody knows everybody. To shame somebody is brutal. And if someone is doing corrupt acts, let us shame them. And even if the court system doesn't catch up to them, that shaming is often even worse than what a court system or jails could do to them. So what I'm just saying is, if we stand together and try and nip out the last bit that's there, I really would appreciate that support from everyone in the room. And if you can also help spread that message to really make sure that we as a country can put the final, whatever it is to bed from that perspective. Otherwise, I know what is going to cause discussion, and even when we were drafting the budget, and I saw what our fiscal deficit was doing, I was like, oh no, I can see Mr. Sibiya is going to have a field day with me with our fiscal deficit having grown. And so, but I think what I need to highlight, and that is that for the first time in the country, we have got we have had a contingent liability before through EEC, but we have got more contingent liabilities than we have had before, and the Strategic Oil Reserve being by far the biggest one. Strategic Oil is a massive project we're doing, costing close to, I think, 5.5 billion emalangeni. And I think it's critical. The issue that we spoke of just now, the conflict is happening in Iran. Had we had a 60-day fuel reserve full of fuel, that'll be not a problem at all for us as a country. Now, without that fuel reserve, it can become a possible major problem for us as a country. Not the rising price could be a major problem, but running out of fuel could be an absolute nightmare. So in times like this, we all appreciate the fact that we need to build a strategic fuel reserve. But the strategic fuel reserve, we set up ENPC, we've set up our national petroleum entity as a parastatal to actually build this thing. When we were raising the loan from Taiwan, we pleaded, said, please, can the loan go straight to them? Because it's going to really damage my balance sheet. It's really going to have a big impact on me. Unfortunately, the Exim Bank was saying they don't have a relationship with ENPC, they've got a relationship with the government of Eswatini. And so unfortunately, I had to just bite the bullet and say, okay, well, let's raise the loan through government. Obviously, government has a very strong bilateral agreement now with ENPC, so the money will come into government and the money will go to them. They will repay every cent back into government. The money will go back to Exim Bank of Taiwan. But unfortunately, it's on our balance sheet. Now, it's not going to be repaid with taxpayer money. It's not going to be repaid by even the money that's coming to the consolidated fund. It has to go through the fund. But we have ENPC with their own resources, with their own money that's being generated from when the project starts, as well as the 35 cents on the fuel to repay this loan. And so this one, as well as there's a DBSA one coming, if one extracts those contingent liabilities from our debt stock and looks at our fiscal deficit after that, one will find that we are remaining on the sustainable path that we've managed, that we've, through sweat, blood, and tears, managed to put ourselves onto. We aren't actually diverting off that if you look at the contingent liabilities and remove those from the process. But I see that my 15 minutes are up. Thank you very much. Let us continue the program, Governor, and I'd like a chance to come in towards the end there again. Thank you very, very much.
In the interest of time, I can see they are playing a very nice background there just to underscore and remind how the minister was dressed. And he was really dressed to kill. And in that, component of the attire, I won't say what, but he was really proud. He actually even pushed me out of a picture because I wasn't dressed accordingly. So wherever Inati is, I get an opportunity to hit back. Where is he? Where is he? Well, he's having breakfast, but I hope he hears me. Honorable Minister, let's give a big hand of applause again to the Honorable Minister. We are going to move quite fast and would like to give the Honorable Minister again, with the indulgence of the Program Director. Thank you very much for being agile and living the values of the Central Bank. We will give another 15 minutes just to let the Minister wrap up and respond to most of the issues that have been raised. But I will request, Honorable Minister, that is he going to be part of the panel? What was the idea? How many chairs are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, Minister, we are in. Can we give a big hand of applause as we welcome the Honorable Minister of Finance, Neil Rackenbeck. Give a big hand. May I also invite the next panelist, Mr. Sanele Siaya, UNESWA economics lecturer and independent economist. Mr. Siaya. Sbiya. Nsiteban Siaya. Whoa. Please, take a, give him a big hand. He gives very good comments. Sometimes they are balanced, sometimes, of course, they are skewed, but we go with the principle in economics, holding all other factors constant. Yeah, so we welcome you, Mr. Sbiya. And then we give a big hand of applause, Mr. Muzi Siyaya. Muzi Siyaya, the Managing Director of Ubombo Sugar. A very good friend. He's a golfer, but not that great, but he tries. But a very good leader that the nation is blessed with and doing a lot of good work in the sugar industry, and we appreciate you. And now I invite, let me go according to this picture there that I see, Miss Ketiwe. I was reminded that I mustn't say Ketiwe. So it's Ketiwe Mhlanga, the CEO of SEDCO, responsible for macro, small and medium enterprise. Let's give a big hand of applause. And number 4, we want to appreciate a stalwart and old, no, not old, a matured. Let me be careful with my words here. Very experienced, matured banker, Mr. Zakele Lukele, who is the Executive Director, Eswatini Bankers Association, former Managing Director of Eswatini Bank. Please take a seat, sir. We welcome you and we appreciate you. And the last, but certainly not the least, the World Vision Operations Director, responsible for social development, priorities, development financing, and partnership outcomes, Ms. Sakile Dlamini. Give her a big hand of applause. We come a long way with Sakile in our days in church. So those of you that don't know, she's a Christian. Good. Now that's my panel. So, Minister, where is my mic? Just so that you can see how I can be very democratic, Honorable Minister. I voted myself to be the panelist. So I told the whole bank that it's me who will be the chair of the panelists. it looks like they were not selecting me from why things were going. And then I was quick to say, Dr. Homo, please, may I have this role? And so I voted myself. So if I do a bad job, please, it's me, it's my fault. Right. I will start with you, Minister. If you can pass the mic. Please, if we can try and use the mic. So I will give each one of you, other than the minister, just a reflection, and I will ask a question. But of course, you can expand and take about 3 minutes. Just give your reflections on what the minister has said, looking at the number of the panel. And then I'll ask some specific questions depending on what and how you have covered. But I want to start off with you, Honorable Minister. First of all, congratulations once again. We are very, very delighted and presenting a budget in a very, very difficult time. And one of the issues, Minister, that I know is in your mind and you are thinking about it is the issue of debt level. In your budget, you are already showing a deficit of about over 5 billion. And of course, we have gone back from where we have been in the past in terms of our deficit. And I know that this is very important to you. Fiscal consolidation is very important, the fiscal consolidation plan and long-term sustainability. So my question, Minister, is can you elaborate on the government medium-term strategy for managing the public debt? And where do you see it optimal and sustainable? And ensuring that there is fiscal sustainability whilst managing the essential development spending. So that is the area that I would like you just to expand on it, Minister, because I know it brings confidence to the investors, it gives confidence to the private sector and also to the nation that we are sustainable and there are plans. And debt, if it's not well managed, it can run ahead of you and you'll find yourself chasing it. And we've seen many countries that have gone to programs because they were not able to contain debt. And in your narrative, Minister, if you could also give a kind of a feel how you see domestic resource mobilization versus external debt, which you need to always have balance on the two. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Governor. Let me take note of this. So Governor, my view on debt, and obviously opinions vary here. Hey? I mean, you as a country, you can take two roads. You can take the road to say, let me keep my debt at low levels, create the confidence in the private sector, put what you can to enable the private sector, and have that be the engine for growth. Or you can say, let the government lead the growth, which means that we say, let government push the debt levels very high, invest in whatever you feel you need, even sometimes infringing in private sector space. We make government now doing the mining and doing private sector business and just drive the growth through that approach. My view is to say that let us rather take the first option. But views differ here, even within cabinet and within Eswatini. There's many views say, no, let us rather put down the handbrake on the debt levels and let us use our balance sheet, leverage that as heavy as possible so that we can get better growth through the economy by driving and by pushing investments in that space. And yes, as a country, keep in mind, I was in the forest industry before I became Minister of Finance. So I've naturally got a very long, when you plant a tree today and you're going to wait 20 years for the tree to grow before you cut the tree down, you naturally have a very long-term sustainable view on life and on things. And so I absolutely believe in the first approach, is to say, let government because the problem is when a country gets into default, the private sector suffers. It's the private sector that runs out of forex. The moment a country runs out of foreign reserves and forex to be able to help the nation with, the economic growth takes a tumble. So to be able to protect from that and be able to make sure that doesn't happen, I believe that the first approach is the best here. And so the bottom line is, at the moment, we are saying in the medium term, we've been saying for a long time, we don't want to get above the 45% debt to GDP ratio. We've been trying to keep it around 40. Obviously, it bumpers around naturally. When the US dollar moves, when interest rates move, or other cases, it moves by itself. It's not in our control. But we're trying to keep it around that level. For 3 years, we maintained it around the 41% level. Last year, we decided, keeping in mind that we had a 2 billion stock of arrears that wasn't going away, and we said, you know what, arrears is debt. Whether it's on our debt to GDP ratio or not, we're bluffing ourselves. It's much worse debt than debt that's on the balance sheet. And so let us rather convert it from arrears debt to real debt, and we raise another 2 billion, taking it to around 43%. In this year's budget, even though I know the fiscal deficit looks like it's shooting up, but please understand that we are saying if you exclude contingent liabilities, we're maintaining the 43% debt to GDP ratio. In fact, it's coming down slightly from 43.3 or something like that to 43.1 is what the numbers are showing. But yes, we are also saying if there are contingent liabilities, let us not be too tough on that, which has got its own funding streams. Let us allow those kind of investments to come in so that we can also do what we can to grow the economy. That's a quick one. Fiscal consolidation, Governor, is we were on. I don't believe fiscal consolidation. We obviously need to be constantly looking at expenses and cutting expenses where we can. But at the moment, we are because we are following the path of what our GDP is giving us. We are not trying to reduce at the moment. We are saying let us try and get the growth out of the fact that our GDP is growing in our balance sheet. But absolute sustainability is absolutely critical in our discussions and our thinking in the way forward.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think it's a very, very important construct for us to appreciate as a nation. I'll come back, Minister, later on after the panelists have given some few thoughts on your budget speech. I want to move to Mr. Sibiya, not Muzi Sibiya now, but Sanele Sibiya. Just to make sure that the names I get correct. So Sanele, you are one of the economists that I think you're doing a good job. You bring a scholastic view. You also bring a pragmatic view to the nation. And I would like you to just give us your reflection on the key implications of this budget that the minister has presented, especially its implication to the livelihoods of Eswatini, particularly in terms of employment. The minister was speaking very strongly that this budget is pro-employment. Are you seeing that in the budget? The issue of cost of living, the minister has addressed, the salary review. And by the way, Minister, I want you to prepare. I hear that there is also state enterprise entities review, salary review. The question I have in mind, are already preparing a subvention for them, and how are they going to be sustainable? But it's just a reflection I've been thinking about. And then lastly, overall welfare. What does this budget mean? You can take it from an academic perspective and also practically. How is it being felt in the pocket or in the life of my mother down there at Gege?
Thank you, Governor, Honorable Minister. So my analysis and outlook of the budget, when I looked at it, Minister, I must say the number took me aback a bit. It was quite a number, 36 billion. But when I then took a deep dive and looked into the budget itself, I realized that it's trying to balance, long-term growth. Maybe we need to change the scope, the way we are thinking. And right now, I think instead of worrying about the debt, we should be worried about how we sustain growth at 6% going forward so that we are able to sustain the debt levels and not just play the numerator-denominator effects there. So I am not necessarily worried about the debt this time around, Minister, but I'm worried about what we are doing to ensure that we are able to pay. And I'm quite pleased when I looked at the budget. We've got capital expenditures at 22%. Now there is an investment in ensuring that we are investing in the capability to repay the debt. And then when you then look into the allocations, education, highest share of the budget, and that's one of the ways we get our people into long-term sustainable employment, and thereby dealing with the poverty problem. And then health, even though we're below the 15% mark, but I do believe if we can get medication to people, would be making a valid impact in people's lives. And then in terms of how we get to fill the budget, with capital expenditures, we expect that there is going to be the direct transfer of money to people's pockets through employment. And we are seeing, the rounding up of multiple factory shells. Again, that's going to be an avenue for employment. And in terms of, where I found it a bit wanting was in terms of what are we doing to target the youth directly. I've always said that for the past three years, because that's where we need to shift things and move gears forward so that we get that huge part of our labor force into work, and thereby we reap what we call the demographic dividend. So overall, I do believe we are going to feel it in our pockets, but I did expect the minister there to somehow mirror Minister Kondongwane with a bit of a playing around with the tax brackets, so that we're able to get a bit of relief in terms of the cost of living. But you do understand what we are dealing with. And in terms of social welfare, I think for the past 2 years, what we've done, we've taken a tangent into direct housing provision. Again, that's commendable. I actually liked that one. But I feel we missed a bit in terms of cost of living adjustment on, on grants and transfer payments to Eswatini, because they all feel the cost of living pressures just as the wage bill. And then my parting shot in terms of my worry is we need to get a balance in terms of 30% capex, and then we bring the wage bill below 30% as the minister has undertaken, and ensure that, with overall recurring expenditures, they would sit in that comfortable zone while we're able to ensure that we have the right capital formation and occurring in the kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sibiya. Very, very insightful there. I think, Minister, I would like you to probably start thinking about responses on the areas that he has mentioned. The area of youth, is the budget really addressing the youth? And the point of employment, I think you raised it, but my question was to stretch it. Is it sustainable employment? Are we creating employment into the future? Or building factory shells? I mean, the central bank is building a structure here, is creating employment for the next 2 to 3 years, but is not sustainable employment into the future. Manufacturing, productive investment capital are the ones that tend to give longevity in employment and deal with poverty. So I think, Minister, if we could just reflect on that, I think it's a very pointed point that we may think about. But I like the way you're thinking about it. Let's think sustainable growth than worry about debt, because there's good debt. It's good debt when it leads to growth. It's bad debt when it leads to consumption. So I think a very good reflection there, Mr. Spear. I come to my brother, Muzi. Firstly, thank you very much for making the time. I know you were actually very busy and very tight, but you pushed everything to be here. We want to hear the private sector perspective. And by the way, congratulations on supporting government on the energy supply. I think what Ubombo, please, if you get an opportunity to talk about that as well, and how you are contributing to the grid, in particular on a sustainable basis, and not just meeting your needs as a meal. But I want you to start off on how do you see and assess this budget in terms of measures that are supporting private sector growth, improving investment climate, and fostering sustainable economic development. How do you see this budget? Is the minister giving the latitude, the leeway, private sector to thrive through this budget?
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. I note the embargo, the press muzzling earlier in your remarks that we shouldn't criticize. So I'm already under pressure. I'm already under pressure, Minister.
You can critique, not criticize.
Honorable Minister, good morning and good morning to the House. I'll just consolidate your questions, Governor, and just give a private sector perspective, yeah. And perhaps if I still have a few seconds, I can touch on the Ubombo project. But, budgets are often assessed in terms of allocations and fiscal balances, Minister. But for a small, open economy like ours, I think the more important question is whether each budget, gradually, each year, reduces the fundamental economic structural constraints that we have in the country that limit growth. And in our case, I think those economic structural constraints, and I refer to them as SEM constraints, which is SACU revenue dependence, energy dependence, and the market size limitations that we have because of our size and our landlocked geography. So these are fundamental constraints, and I think if we're to talk growth long term, we have to make efforts to address these three structural constraints. And I think your budget, is starting to address some of the structural constraints that can limit growth in the long term. So we appreciate the progress that's being made towards energy dependency. In your speech, you spoke quite at length about some of the private sector-driven energy projects that are coming to the market. So that will start to address the E in the SEM, the structural constraints. And that's a long-term perspective. So our hope as the private sector is that you continue to do this so that we can really start to address the E, because the E does constrain growth. Manufacturing showed modest growth last year, but that can quickly be eroded if the electricity issues are not addressed, and growth in general in the country. So I'm happy that there was a concerted effort to look into that. And that includes the strategic oil reserve as well. It's a big intervention. Then if we go to infrastructure, I think it is an infrastructure-led budget. You spoke earlier about the need for government sometimes to take debt to stimulate economic growth. We don't like it as the private sector. I think it should be, that's a development economist perspective. But we like private sector-led growth, to create jobs. And earlier on, last week in the budget speech, the Deputy Governor was engaging with I and Nati to say that the private sector is not creating sufficient jobs. And she'd like to see more of that. But the infrastructure angle is exceptionally good for a small landlocked economy like ours. We need corridors to reduce the logistic costs and allow businesses to import goods easily. But you have to be cautious, Minister, of the ability of the state to execute these large-scale projects. In the past, we have seen projects, and you spoke earlier about the ICC. When you make the decision to undertake a large infrastructure project, you have to complete it on time, on budget, for it to have the desired economic impact. So look into the capacity of the state to be able to execute these large-scale infrastructure projects, but it is a welcome intervention. And I think in the design of the delivery, and I think my colleague here will talk about SMEs, but I think it's also important to ensure that the money stays here. I don't know how in terms of the procurement framework, but with such a large amount going to infrastructure, please make sure that there's meaningful participation of local companies in that infrastructure spend. I think agriculture, self-explanatory, you are focusing on the right projects. MNEP will stimulate agriculture activity in the Shisweleni region. LUCIP is being completed. It's a stimulant for growth. But agriculture is short term if we do not move into the agro-processing side, and that includes the sugar industry as well, by going into downstream benefits. So that's a good approach that we appreciate. Tax compliance, we are helping you. Nati had a big tax endeavor yesterday to drive compliance in the private sector. And I think we appreciate the certainty, Minister, from a private sector perspective. You know, the tax regime in the country is absolutely, and you know, I report to shareholders that sit in London. They have a global view of the African continent. And one of the things they always speak about highly is the tax certainty and the policy certainty around that area. Education, I think, is a good investment, but it cannot also work without, you know, going into private sector partnerships, and especially the university reforms are quite important so that industry can get the right quality of skills. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Muzi. I think that slides very nicely into the small, medium, and micro enterprises. Ketiwe, you are running a very, very critical portfolio. And just for the benefit of the nation, you know, we need to grow our own timber. If you look at economies that have thrived and that have survived, you look at Singapore, you look at Malaysia, you look at Taiwan, they have anchored their economies with grassroots entrepreneurs and enterprises. And I think from a big scale, we need that foreign direct investment. Definitely, it kickstarts the economy, but it is sustained with small enterprise businesses. And there's something we talk about at the Central Bank Minister, maybe I should share with this. We would like to support an export-driven economy, because when we promote export, we generate forex, we bolster the reserves of the country. And we believe that the SME sector is critical. Do you believe that the minister's budget is enabling you to galvanize this sector to achieve its purpose and value add in this country?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Honorable Minister, on your presentation of the budget. Please note, he's also my principal. So, however, what we can indicate when we, as key players in the SME space, looking at the budget split, what we found is that it came with intent. I think the keyword is intent, of ensuring that our MSMEs are part of the ecosystem. It starts off with the element of acknowledging the role that MSMEs are actually contributing in our economy in terms of the GDP, in terms of even employment in Eswatini. We have, though, a challenge with how this current budget is going to now absorb the informal sector of our SMEs. Because as we speak, we have about 75% of our MSMEs being in the informal sector. And with that, I feel that's where we lose most of our youth, because most of them are also within that informal sector. And when it comes to our entrepreneurs, we also see that youth unemployment continues within this country to go up. We are at 50% now. And with that unemployment, we are still trying to channel the youth to do business. And the kind of business that our youth is into now has been diversified, which has been captured by the budget in terms of the IT, in terms of innovation, and in terms of them moving now into digital platforms and e-commerce space when they want to sell their products. However, there's an element that we're skipping for our entrepreneurs in ensuring that they are protecting any of their produce that they come up with in terms of services, the innovations that they have, because we are seeing them in the fintech space, and there isn't any kind of support that is directed to them, and we would like to see them going towards that. We have schemes in terms of access to finance that I think the Honorable Minister has been pushing to our MSMEs to utilize, and some have tapped into them, whether it's in the agricultural space or whether it's just for capital seed or growth. Those schemes are there. But now we need to change the mindset of our MSMEs to also tap into other forms of access to finance, utilize crowdfunding. Intent is also coming out from government. Currently, because of the conducive environment we have when it comes to investment, we have brought in impact investors who are directly speaking to the SMEs in terms of how can we support you, issues of equity, how do we strengthen that mindset for our entrepreneurs to be willing to even use our stock exchange in terms of listing to raise capital, so that they are not only relying on the financing through commercial banks if they are unable to utilize some of those products. However, what we also see, there is an intent in terms of linkage for our MSMEs to be with the big companies, creating that value chain from the agricultural sector in the infrastructure development, as well as when you look as well for the program that is specified for the youth through the World Bank. Those programs are working towards ensuring that there is that sustainability whereby our indigenous business owners as well as the youth are able to be part of the ecosystem. What is key is capacitating them and ensuring that there is that financial management, business development acumen, and providing not only, we speak of factory shells for the foreign direct investor. We want factory shells for our MSMEs. SETCO is not sustainable for them, for example. They need to move out of SETCO and now have access to factory shells that are for Eswatini. I think what is lacking for our SMEs is we are not creating incentives for them, but we do create incentives for the foreign direct investor. But for our domestic, where is the incentive for them? We need to start thinking about how do we empower, how do we incentivize them, because they're here to stay. They're not leaving. The money will be in the country. It will circulate. Then there will be the power of purchasing. You won't be worried about, can I go into any shop at Pick and Pay and be able to get a loaf of bread, because there will be circulation in our economy and will also create employment. Can I end there for now?
Yeah. I think, Minister, you have got quite a lot to reflect on there. The issue of factory shells, are we giving incentives to our locals? Are we really growing a sustainable economy? And I think Sbia said, let's focus, let us be pro-growth. And if we are pro-growth, but it must be sustainable, are we setting up solid foundations for the future and for the generations that are coming? I will move to Zakele and give Babe Zakele Kele, who is aggregating thoughts from the banking community. I would like to hear, Babe Zakele, what are your views? Does the budget speech present opportunities? What challenges is it presenting? And how is it going to affect stability, financial stability, credit availability, and what's the sector's role in ensuring that we support the minister? I heard the minister very carefully. He doesn't want to crowd out the private sector, and the budget is very pro-private sector led, and the banks have to intermediate. But let me just give a credit because the MDs are here. Minister, 2002, when I came on board as governor, the lending to the private sector was about 15 billion. And we were battling. And I remember Director Research, Kumbuzo, used to talk about this over and over. Today, we're at over 22 billion, almost 23 billion in about 3 years, 4 years, or so, 3.5 years. So the banks have intermediated. The banks have participated extensively in treasury bills and bonds, playing their role as primary dealers. So what is this budget saying to you? Do you think the minister is creating space for you or is crowding you out? And how are you going to ensure that the banks do their role and they do it well?
Okay, thank you, Governor. Thank you, Minister, and morning to everyone. My perspective on the budget is that it is a pro-growth budget, and with a heavy emphasis on capital growth, but sacrificing a little bit on a deficit, which is within, I will justify it maybe later on as to whether it is sustainable at these levels or whether we need to be more cautious. I think the governor has spoken about financial stability as a very important pillar in the economy. I'm glad that the minister recognized in his speech that the banks are well capitalized and quite sufficiently liquid and operating very well. So the banks in this country have been run very well in relation to maybe what could have happened in other areas that we know. So maybe the banks should take, and the central bank as a regulator has done a good job in ensuring that the banks are operating in prudently, and then also that we operate in an environment that is conducive to sound banking principles. In terms of the budget, some issues have been discussed, but I will start maybe with the social impact of the budget, that we see a lot of schemes and funds that are incubating SMEs and maybe also encouraging rural growth, such as the Hambubuye, Underswade, and the other ones, the Agricultural Fund. But these lay opportunities that in future, maybe if this create viable and bankable projects that create a growing private sector and SME sector that is not reliant on the fiscus, as we know that government resources are limited. I will also go into the energy sector. We've seen that part of this sector is now growing into private hands, which creates an opportunity for funding opportunities within the banking sector. And if I can touch on another issue, is to maybe congratulate the minister on the implementation of UMSEBE, which is called the Integrated Financial Management and Information System. I think that's a very critical step forward on government to bring in systems as part of management of the budget system. In my hope as a banker, I mean, in my assessment, although I don't have the insight on how it operates, I think what the minister says is that this reform marks a decisive shift toward program-based budgeting, enhanced fiscal discipline, real-time expenditure monitoring, and strengthened accountability. I think I'm quoting his words from where I sit, I hope that this will address some of the management side of the budget, especially the issues which have always been there around government areas. If we can address those who are addressing one of the issues that have led to, which could be a risk that some of these enterprises that we are trying to grow can then collapse. But I hope I'm correct in assessing that this will address that issue. But I think it's an important issue that the government areas are addressed. And again, government adopting systems is quite important, because the more you eliminate human intervention, the more you can address the recurrent budget issues, such as reducing your numbers, which has been discussed for many years, but unfortunately, that's a difficult issue to attend to. But I come from an industry where systems are part of a significant part of operations, and we see the efficiency that they bring, and therefore also in terms of reducing human intervention and possibly numbers. The issue maybe that would relate to your question on the impact on the financial system, on the financial system. I would go back to your first question to the minister, which was on the debt. We see that the government deficit is a growth element of the debt. But I think there's good debt and bad debt, as this has already been discussed. We see that in terms of growing the economy, we need to focus more on growth in terms of the capital side of the equation. Our budget deficit comes around 4.9%, which is slightly above the generally approved and accepted 3%. I hope we are not creating debt above our levels. But I think from my side, when I look at the growth level on GDP, I think the focus on the growth of GDP is around 46%, which is projected for 2026, according to IMF figures, which I saw somewhere else. And this comes from 5.6% in 2025. I think these are impressive figures, which means our capacity to manage the debt is being mitigated by the growth in the economy, because that's the worst possible thing is that the increase in debt undermines the capacity to manage and repay the debt. Our repayment levels are still sustainable, so I believe that's still an opportunity to say, in the short term, probably the minister has acted in a prudent manner, but the long term can also be, if the debt becomes uncontrolled, and then it becomes a situation where the economy could be affected in a detrimental way. We know that in a debt crisis, budget deficits normally lead to high inflation crisis and interest misalignment. In terms of looking at the debt at the moment, we can say the levels of inflation, interest rates are still at a very reasonable and very prudent levels. I've known inflation in this country when it was at 29%, and I've known when we look at the figures these days, you compare with those in the 80s, you look at a very, very progressive scenario. And then in terms of financing the debt, because the debt has to be financed, the banks will see this maybe more immediately than other players, because we participate in funding. So we believe that if debt is managed properly, it will not undermine the liquidity in the system, because if everything then goes to funding government debt, then the problem is that there's very little to fund private sector. So that's why the problem with the financial system can be undermined by debt. And then if the deficits are excessive and prolonged, and they tend to suck capital from the markets. And I've known situations in East Africa, maybe in the 80s and 90s, when commercial banking literally collapsed because of government debt. All that the banks did was to open the doors, collect savings, and then close the doors, and then go and buy government bonds. And then the government would literally issue new bonds in order to pay the previous ones. And that's how the economies operated. And the IMF came in and said, you can't do this forever. And they kicked the IMF out because they thought the IMF was not coming with more stringent rules, but eventually they had to bring them back and continue with that. I'm losing my thoughts. You asked a few more questions, which I'm not sure if I'm. But I think the question I have is the same one as which Mr. Sibia alluded to, and which the minister also addressed, that in the long run, debt is not sustainable unless there is growth. You can only create a capacity, you create a capacity to repay the growth, to repay the debt. So in terms of managing the financial sector, there is a need to be prudent on the levels at which we grow, but we grow with caution, which this budget, I think, addresses. In one of my assessments, I said the budget is expansionary, but it is cautious, and it also emphasizes fiscal consolidation with disciplined expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Very, very broad view there from the banking sector. But what I think we should take comfort on, Minister, is that the banks are promising to come and play their part. But it's also a valid point that when now the banks are pushing all their deposits and into funding government, are we then missing out intermediating to grow the economy? Because they have to play a part. So that interplay between monetary policy and fiscal policy, I think is very, very, very important. I want to conclude the first reflections and we'll then go very quick in the next session. So I was quite generous with you, but the next one I want you just very quick one as we wrap up, and then please you can start preparing questions if there are any questions. And I would like to be handing back to the minister in about 10 minutes. So that guides you. The minister was well overboard in the speech, praising and thanking social partners. And I hope he did mention World Vision. I hope. I'm now going to check the speech, but let's hope World Vision was mentioned. But Honourable Minister, it's so amazing that your budget, as you put that budget, the social partners, programs like the World Vision, are doing so much on the side that are helping Eswatini. I mean, you look at the PEFA fund, how much you budget for health, and a big chunk of money sits outside the budget that is helping Eswatini. How are you finding this budget, and how do you feel that the social issues are being addressed? And what would you challenge the minister on?
Thank you very much, Governor, and I acknowledge the minister. As civil society, I think we also equally appreciate the priorities that have been set through the government, through the budget for this year, looking at particular areas like education, agriculture, looking at issues of health. We believe, though, that the budget is not just an abstract policy document. We believe that for us, we see it, the budget experienced in the classrooms where the children are sitting and getting an education. the budget is experienced when Gogo Emakaya goes to the hospital and is able to access the medication. We experience it as we see our young people employed in families, and communities are resilient even to the economic and environmental shocks that are being experienced. When we look at the budget, we really appreciate, and it has already been spoken to, around the allocation to the Ministry of Health, and also the reforms that are going on, in particular regarding the central medical stores. We do believe that the challenge is not only financing, it's also the procurement efficiency, the supply chain integrity, the forecasting accuracy, and leakage prevention. And so we do see that the words of the minister are really committing to ensure that all of these issues are well taken care of. For us as civil society, we'll continue to work together, partner with government, to ensure that we also provide the feedback loops that are in our communities and support the programs that government is implementing, in particular when we speak to issues of HIV prevention and also access to health. We do want to share, though, Minister, that one big consideration that you may have looking at the space that we are operating in is the mental health issues that are emerging in the communities, affecting our young people, affecting our children, affecting our women, affecting the people that are in this room. And we feel that as the Ministry of Health, it would be good as well to focus on such issues that affect our community. On the education, we also note that there's that allocation that has been given, 6.4 billion, and this represents the largest share of the national budget. We note the allocations that have been made to support orphaned and vulnerable children, as well as the scholarships. Again, this is a commendable prioritization, but allocation alone does not guarantee the outcomes. Challenges continue, and they include the learning poverty and foundational literacy gaps, the hunger affecting concentration, the infrastructure disparities between rural and urban schools. We saw the MD Ubombo Shuka donating yesterday to a school. We really appreciate those kinds of initiatives. And we also see the social and psychological stress that is affecting our learners. We see school feeding remains critical. We do hope that it will continue to be addressed, because we see it as a barrier to attendance and performance of our learners. We do challenge our government to continue ensuring that there's a timely disbursement of funds, transparent school feeding procurement, and equitable distribution of the materials under the competency-based education. Of course, we will continue to do our part as civil society, supporting remedial education initiatives, strengthening parental engagement, and also monitoring delivery at the school level. On social protection, which speaks to the most vulnerable, organizations like World Vision and other civil society actors are what we do on a daily. And we do acknowledge and appreciate the allocation that has been given to the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister. We note that last year, over 263,000 Emaswati benefited from food assistance, and hundreds of houses were built for vulnerable households. We see that this is a strong social commitment. However, we do note that challenges continue, in particular the rising food insecurity, that is especially in the climate-affected areas. We continue to experience high levels of gender-based violence, and also the child protection risks and youth unemployment pressures. We therefore do say that the revision of that budget, I think someone else also said it earlier, around the bokoko, the elderly, and also the persons living with disabilities, to see how they can further be supported through the budget. On agriculture and social, we recognize agriculture as a social development driver of food security. And we think that the allocation that has been provided, yes, is well acknowledged. We do think there should be strengthening around the household resilience, the nutrition outcomes, and also the rural income generation, all of which contribute to social well-being. The last one is on the water, sanitation, and hygiene. We know that where there is water provision, a family is able to have a garden. A child does not encounter violence on the way to collect water. They are able to be at school and focus on their work. And so we appreciate the allocation that has been done. We do feel that in partnership with others and also other funding instruments, this will be achieved. The issue of the youth employment has already been mentioned. I may not speak further on that. However, we do want to challenge to say that even as the budget has been allocated, we think that the skills training that is currently going on should be aligned to the market demands, and also that the apprenticeships, they also translate into actual job placements for our youth, and that we support mechanisms to ensure that they are youth-led enterprises. And of course, as civil society, we will continue to play our part, working with the institutions that government has set up to ensure that the young people are able to access the funding that is available, and they are also able to start their businesses and they become sustainable. Please allow me to end here, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sakile. So, Honorable Minister, you have got an array of issues from academia, private sector, large companies, quasi public sector, SMEs and the banks, and now the NGO. So we try to diversify the thoughts. I would like the team to start thinking. Each one of you will have a minute. I've coined it here. What's the challenge to the minister? What do you place it as a challenge or a question that he must deal with to ensure that this budget is executed? Is there any, just one or two things that you think the minister must deal with? You can look at it from your perspective or maybe broadly, so that the minister has got something tangible from this seminar. In the meantime, we shall be taking questions from the floor. I see that they are coming fast and furious. So I'll be looking at them. Some of them that have been addressed, I will pick. And Minister, whilst you are listening, also keep an eye on the questions. I'll highlight which one that, and if again there's one that you like, you are more than welcome to address. But I want to give my panelists one more time. Sbia, from an academia economist point of view, what would you like to challenge the minister with, and what do you think the minister must do to make this budget work?
Thank you, Governor. So, in my perspective, to make this budget work, what we need is expedient fiscal spending. We need to ensure that the money gets there on time and we get to spend it on time, Minister, and I don't know if that is going to be possible. So we minimize those revenue target misses to ensure that we are able to deliver the money. And then also, going forward, Minister, I would urge that we find efficiencies within government instead of raising the envelope. Maybe let's look at what we can do within government, and I think South Africa has done that successfully. They were able to find around 12 billion just from that exercise where you look through your spending items and then you realign and readjust those. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siaya? Wow.
Okay, this one is fine. So, Minister, for me, three things. I think execution, I spoke about it. I want to emphasize your infrastructure-led budget will not function if there's no execution. The second one, and I like the domestic mobilization of revenues. It will reduce that SACCO dependency. Continue doing that. Thirdly, Minister, don't get tempted to spend on non-productive assets. Always on your capital expenditure, look at productive assets for the country, not fancy projects. Thank you.
Thank you. I give you an opportunity whilst we are there. Where are you with this project? When are we seeing it? Can you be the first one that start and finish? Because you've been talking about it, I think, since I was in the banking sector in 1992. Ubombo was saying they are going to do an energy since 1992. Those of you, some of you were not born, so I'm just giving it. Where are you with it? When are you starting it and delivering it?
So the private sector is far more efficient, Minister, as you know. That the project is has an 18-month construction period. We commission in June 2028. We've started building. Stefanuti won the Silvers contract. A big Indian company called Eastcheck will do the big boilers and turbines, only because, Minister, we just don't have that capacity on this part of the world. So we'll commission in June. Minister Energy wants it commissioned in March. These guys over here have funded the bulk of the debt, so we've stimulated the financial services domestically. There's $1.2 billion that's come from our local market, and those term sheets are being finalized as I speak. So we should have that power going into the grid June 2028.
2028?
Yes.
Let's give a big hand. Our grid, how many KVs? How much KVs are we getting on the grid?
It's 40 megawatts.
40 megawatts.
40 megawatts for
40
38. And I mean, it's got an impact because our domestic demand at the moment is about 220, 250, yeah.
Well done.
So it's
well done.
starting to chip at that.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
But don't forget, Minister, the three things. Ketiwe, what would you like the minister, what challenge him? What do you think he must do? Or a question that you may have?
Definitely would like the Honorable Minister to fully implement IFMIS, mainly because we would want our MSMEs to be paid on time. We don't want those problems when they are looking for payments. And also we want to request the Honorable Minister look into incentives for our MSMEs. The youth, can we ensure that we are linking them with also the big companies when it comes to localization, when it comes to skill transfers? Can we just absorb them to ensure that we promote entrepreneurial growth? We are working towards commercializing some of the products that they come up with in terms of their innovations from projects such as JA, from projects such as Enectas. Let's fully support them to now putting those products into the commercial market.
Thank you. Zakele, one issue. What are the banks saying to the minister?
Only one issue. Thank you very much. I would think for me, maybe the consolidation of UMSEBE is a critical element of government improvement in delivery of services. And I would think the digitization strategy should continue to be consolidated. Some time back, we were discussing with the Minister of ICT on possible extension of delivering government services through banks, such as the delivery of passports as they do in other countries. And we say the banks are there to support government in enabling the delivery of services. So the banks will be there to support that.
Thank you. Madam.
Thank you, Governor. For me, I believe that the true measurement of the good implementation of the budget is not the millions spent, but it is the food on the table. It is the access to clean water. It is sanitation and hygiene, and I believe that for that to work, the public procurement must be efficient, it must be transparent, and it must be accountable so that it supports the service delivery to the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I think you can see the questions, they are around the budget, the construct of the budget. I think the element of the deficit we have spoken about. I mean, these are issues that we will push them through to you to have a look at. There is a feeling that have you not excluded some elements in there, in the budget, in your debt, because you've got a debt redemption. And I think this could be, if it's a numbers issue, definitely the central bank works with the minister in ensuring that those that are dealt. I think one question that I would like you to maybe look at, Minister, is do you think when will the 20% to 33% threshold be adjusted to protect the purchasing power of Eswatini? I think that's what Sbia was also saying, pushing the brackets. This year you didn't touch anything. There is a feeling that you could claw back or create fiscal space through the brackets. Is that something that you are thinking about? I don't know, I would like you, Minister, to come and answer when you are doing your 15 minutes. So let's just think. On my side, can we see any more questions? Are there no more questions? The rest, you can leave them there. The Minister will reflect to them. No more questions, you can raise your hand. I see a hand over there. You can see the gentleman does not know how to use technology. At the central bank, we use technology. Oh, he's a former central banker. So, Mr. Dube, you can stand up. Please ask your question so that we can hear. Also an independent economist, analyst. Can somebody please, yeah, he's got a mic now.
Sanmonani, thank you
There's
for that.
another one over there. Please, just one quickly. I want to give the minister enough time.
Thank you. Mine goes to the job creation that you are talking about. It seems to be jobs that are not professional. I just want to use that for explanation. So more in agriculture, more in this, more in this. Unfortunately, our universities are producing academics. We've got economists, we've got statisticians, we've got accountants, all those. What is government putting to make sure those young people who are unemployed in those professions are able to start something that will work? Not everybody is interested in agriculture, but how does government improve those skills to make things work? The last one is on the projects. The MD said it briefly, but I'm concerned on the project risk management on those projects. Is government enforcing enough such that projects are done in quality, in terms of time, completed in time, and in budget? Because those are the risks that we face. ICC is a very, very good example. So what is it that's there? Thank you.
Thank you. I take from Kango. Please, very brief.
Yes, thank you, Governor, Honorable Minister. I have two questions. The first one is the panelists, I think they were kind when they were talking about the debt. Because if I look at the estimates, the debt service in terms of the interest plus principal is estimated to go above 9 billion from, say, maybe 3.2 billion 2 years ago. I think the rate of growth in terms of the debt is much, much faster than the growth in the economy that they're talking about. So I am worried that our children will work very, very hard to service the debt. And it's not clear in terms of what are these productive investments that we're making. My second question is, I went to a secondary school looking for a place for my daughter. Last week, they quoted me 18,000 Emalangeni for Form 1. Now, the OVC grant is currently sitting at 1,950. I then ask Honorable Minister whether it is not the time to think about universal free primary and secondary education to ensure that we remove the stigma around OVC and also the targeting gaps that are there, and ensure that we reduce the 35% dropout rate in terms of secondary schooling. Thank you.
Thank you. One more. That's going to be the last. Can I see if you still have a burning question? I've got one. Go once, go twice, go three. You're going to be the last one. And Minister, I would like you to look at that one which talks about spending outside the allocated budget. I think the question is, will IFMIS deal with that? And how do you ensure that there's control to stick to the budget that you have presented and make sure that it's executed? Over to you, sir. Can
Thank
you just remind me, Kango I knew, the economist I knew, I don't know you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm from the UN and I'm an assistant economist from the UN. My name is Mlamuli Malinzi. So my question, Minister, is a few years ago, there's been a lot of talk of the fourth industrial revolution. And I fear that the momentum seems to be going down, or the push for strength in that area seems to be going down when I'm looking at the allocation to the ICT ministry. And by the way, just to appreciate the efforts by the government to use digital technologies for efficiency and access, that's a very great thing. I applaud that. But I would like to know how we then moving not just from efficiency and access, but to be using the digital space for productivity. And I know that would be difficult in terms of we have a very large unemployed youth, but how exactly are we making the necessary investments to move with the world as we're going into AI, as we're going into robotics, 3D printing, all of those things? If the government is opting maybe to say, let's leave that to the private sector, how is the government creating that enabling environment for the private sector to actually move more into digital leapfrogging, not just for access, not just for efficiency, but also for productivity gains and for commercialization and all those kinds of things? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I hope you have found the session very stimulating. We are going to give the last 15 minutes to the minister as he has requested. Honourable Minister, I want to thank you. I'm not going to come back. And I want to appreciate the panelists for your time, your thoughtfulness, your accuracy in raising the issues for the ministry. And I really, really, really appreciate. And I think you have not spoken just for your institutions, but you have spoken for the nation. Honourable Minister, from the Central Bank, we just want to remind you of the last paragraph. The Central Bank is there to provide the necessary support and advice to government as per the mandate while we execute our monetary policy of ensuring price stability, financial stability that supports economic growth in the Kingdom of Eswatini. We thank you and we hope that you will reflect in your 15 minutes on these very key points that have been raised. I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Appreciate my panel, please, as we invite the Honourable Minister to the hot seat, hot podium. After that, the MC will take over. Or the DG, you will come and close.
There we go. Governor, thank you very much. And man, the timekeeping is impressive, Governor. I really appreciate a function when we really spot on time. So thank you very much for that. So, Governor, you're right. I think the smartest will be me to jump to the questions that they're asked in the end here, I suppose. To be able to wind it up, I think that'll be the smartest way to handle it. So thank you for that. Otherwise, the time doesn't allow for us to go through every point raised by the panelists. So I'll start with Mr. Sibia, just in connection with the expedient spend to pay on time and realign the spending to actual outcomes. And so, and again, he's 100% right. At the moment, we have had a problem, and hence IFMIS is so critical, is because IFMIS is going to be able to transform that element, because the moment someone will supply government goods and they wait, and people keep on saying to them, no, it's the government hasn't got cash flow. It's the most famous excuse now in government to say, no, there's a cash flow problem, hence you're not being paid. Meantime, if someone then comes around to us to say, why we're not being paid, you find there's nothing at Treasury to pay. The paperwork is still somewhere. So I really believe that IFMIS is going to be able to transform that element. And once we have IFMIS in, now let us look, are there possible loopholes? Nothing's perfect, but I really believe that with IFMIS, we're going to be able to make sure that that spend happens on time and at least that there is transparency in it. The fact that we've now raised the cash for the arrears should also really ensure that we have got that we also have the cash flow to be able to pay on time. Now, again, being able to realign the spending to actual outcomes. There's been a few things that have been taking place lately, and that is that, but really one of them is government has moved over from a remeasurable contract kind of engaging, so to a lump sum contract. When I came to the ministry, one of the first things we did as a Ministry of Finance was to say we will never allow a remeasurable contract again, which means from now on, every contract being signed by government is what you call a lump sum contract. Hence, you will find contracts like we have with the ICC, which were before our time, remeasurable contracts. It's been an absolute difficulty trying to get an end. And hence, I'm so happy that the King actually came forward and said, right, okay, we will open the ICC on the 25th of April. Honestly, without that instruction from His Majesty, I'm not sure how long we will still have had the ICC just continuing his plan. So unfortunately, but this is why you'll notice all the projects being done recently, be it the Skunuza Road, the interchange Manzini, virtually all the projects, you'll find that because it's now a lump sum contract, the contract, it's no longer a contractor getting on site and now saying, how long can I stay? Because the longer I stay here, the longer I make money. Two, the quicker I can finish this job, the more money I make. It's flipped the whole thing to the opposite. And hence you find that if I need to come on site, I need to deliver this project and get off site, and the quicker I get off site, the more profit I have left. So I really believe that how we've now managing the contracts is an absolute breakthrough. Mr. Siaya, in connection with execution, I think touching on a very similar point, I think my answer more or less does it. Reliance on dependency on SACU. It's been and again, it's a bit of a two-edged sword, because something we've done very strategically as a Minister of Finance is to also try and increase our SACU receipts. I found that we were leaving money on the table, and when we came in, we found, wow, if we can just stop this, do this, redirect that, and do a few moves on the chessboard, we could increase our SACU income, and we took it from an average of 7-ish to an average of 11.5-ish, where it is now. And there are a few more things we're doing to take it up again now. And so, but at the same time, obviously now I'm making the reverse look like, are we becoming more dependent on SACU? So it's a bit of a tough one to try and manage. But hence you have seen our revenue come with an accelerated growth. If you look at the last 7-8 years of our revenue growth, it is extremely aggressive compared to maybe other countries, even though obviously we're small and everything else, so that works against us, but it has been quite an aggressive because of these two elements. SACU's been growing and tax has been growing at double-digit rates ever since I've been a minister. I'm not so sure before that. But at the same time, for us to try and balance now, so how are we trying to balance the dependency on SACU is not trying to say, how do we reduce SACU? It's a 101 basics. We need to still make sure we get as much as possible to make sure we actually have cash to do things, but to increase our capital expenditure. Because my view is, if we can get our capital expenditure to be the same amount as our average SACU, it means that if, and I don't think there's a high risk of this, but if SACU ends, it means we've got zero for capital, which will be an absolute nightmare, let's be honest. But at the same time, it's not like the lights go off. It's not like you need to retrench half of government and you don't have money for electricity, water, different things. It means you have to restart and rethink your capital program and be smart about restarting that and maybe taking a bit more debt, that kind of thing. But hence, I do believe that if we can get that alignment, and we're aggressively doing that, you'll see our capital expenditure, we're aggressively pushing that up every year to give us the growth that we are starting to see, as well as to try to get it in line with SACU if we can, so that we can have a strong balance there and a strong risk mitigation measure in the process. Spend on productive assets, difficult one. When I was outside of government, I would say, for goodness sake, government, just spend on productive assets. When you're in government, you realize, like, you really need a parliament building, and you really, and it's not, and sometimes it's not only that. It is also sometimes you realize as a country to be able to project a strong image as a country, you do need a central bank with a proper structure. You do need a good parliament building. You do need a nice ICC. Makes a heck of a difference in you be able to host these international meetings. When we have these big international meetings, we've just got to put our hands up as a country and say we can't host them. And the amount that we lose is astronomical. So unfortunately, it's getting the balance right, is to try to say, let us have one, maybe one big one, one smallish one, of these not so productive, how can I say, direct income productive assets, but at the same time not to outweigh that, but to have a balance is really the way we've got to try and do as government. But I do believe things like Mkondo, we've never done a project as big and as impactful as Mkondo Ngoma project. So what I'm saying, that project taking up the lion's share of the budget makes me very proud, and I think we still got our focus in the right area, even though, like I say, it is a tough balance. Ketiu was asking on a fully implemented IFMIS and to be able to pay. I think she was just saying, listen, Minister, please do push that. And again, I'll plead with everyone in the room, whatever you can do to try and help here, to try and have all hands on deck with the IFMIS to try and make sure it happens. We would really appreciate that. There is, like I say, resistance to change, not necessarily because of corruption, it's just difficult to change. It's just so much easier doing what I know. But there's a strong resistance to change, and we are going to battle to get that through. Incentives for youth and to be able to absorb it. So again, I really strongly believe our budget is very, very youth focused. If you look at a lot of the loans we've taken recently, we've taken loans specifically for youth employment. If you look at the loans in agriculture, specifically for women and youth and disabled employment, many of our projects, if you look at our spend that we have, our amount we spend on scholarships, on education, on that, we're spending the lion's share of our budget goes specifically to our children. So I really always feel like one has to defend that. Now, when it comes to forcing the private sector to be able to employ youth or be able to do that, it does become tricky, you know what I mean, and be able to say, listen, you know, we need to force the banks to say, banks, please, we've got a youngster who's developed an app that you can do banking with. Everyone is very keen to engage to see how it can work. But the moment you say, no, we're going to force you now to use this app instead of your technology that you have, it'll be impossible. We'll destroy industry. We'll actually destroy credibility. So we need to be able to do as much encouraging as we can, but I don't like us crossing over that very sensitive line from going from encouraging to forcing. The moment you do that, you set yourself up a whole another set of problems which become very difficult. So we need to, as a country, do as much placement as what we can. I love this UNDP program where they are doing a lot of what do you call them? Placements within the private sector, you know, getting that the stimulation going. And you find even in the company where I come from, a lot of those placements you find go directly from there. The people say, hey, we love these youngsters, that, you know, and they employ most of them. So it really is a brilliant tool. And I think it's that kind of cooperation which can help us a huge amount. When we then come to Mr. Lukele, a digital plan should be focused and make sure we deliver. 100% right, and we need to really ensure that the digital plans we're working on not only is there to do the government system, but really get the procurement, because procurement is going to be a game changer when we get that right in IFMIS, and that's our goal. That's why we've engaged Rwanda to do the IFMIS for us. We've also engaged Rwanda to make sure we do our e-procurement policy, which fits in hand in glove into IFMIS when it's done. And so I absolutely believe when we get all of that right, and you're going to see this, it's phenomenal. It's actually, it streamlines procurement, it makes it transparent, it makes it open, everything done online. It really is, it's going to transform how we do it, and I believe even the youth in that space will be able to be quite impactful. A World Vision, ensure budget spend on water, food, and service delivery. At the moment, electricity, we are slap on track to be able to have 100% electricity distribution by 2030. And we've, funny enough, this week as Cabinet, sitting very strongly now on the waterfront. And we believe that water, we could actually also have 100% access to clean water by 2030. It's going to take about 6.5 billion emalangeni. We've got lovely partners like yourselves that are busy helping us, like the World Bank helping us with these different projects. And so, but we believe with everything on the table now, we could actually access 2030 to be 100% totally everybody having access to clean water. And it'll be a total breakthrough from many perspectives. What it does to health and all the other elements would be an absolute game changer. Food, as you see, the Ministry of Agriculture is very focused on food sustainability and food security. We're constantly making headway there, but again, I'm not someone who, I don't believe we need to die on the hill of food security because we are a net food exporter. We export more than 10 billion emelangenis worth of food, and we import 2 billion. Now we focus, because we import 2 billion, it's a big crisis. No, we export 10 billion, meaning that if we are in some kind of crisis and we speak to the sugar industry to convert to 10,000 hectares of maize overnight, we can absolutely make a plan. It's all about business. Offer the right payment for it, do what we need to do. We can flip very quickly, because where the sugar's grown, you can grow maize through the year. So it means the speed that we could move as a country from planting sugar to quickly planting maize if we need maize as a crisis management tool is totally doable. We have the water and infrastructure, dams, be able to irrigate. Our risk compared to other countries on food insecurity is not nearly as high as others. So for us, I don't think it's a hill worth dying on, because the more we try and slay the dragon of trying to have food, the more money we spend, because now we're forcing someone to plant maize instead of planting sugar, for instance. And it's just not smart. We need to really, economics needs to be number one, not government plans or other things which we sometimes complicate it with. Service delivery. I can speak all down service delivery. There's obviously a lot of things we're doing. I think the budget is quite clear. We're really trying to get our service delivery right. I'll then jump to questions that are asked by the floor. Mr. Dube is asking about job creation, and it feels like what we are doing in the job creation space is not towards the professionals. And I would disagree with that. I'll just take, for instance, what we're doing. And I'll use agriculture, the example you used as the example. So at the moment, we're doing a lot to be able to provide farming companies with land and water to be able to do this. And it means that you now have a farming company which is made up of maybe 150 Eswatini shareholders whose land got put into a scheme. That scheme then plants 200 hectares of sugar and supplies sugar to the sugar industry. In that scheme, you'll find that, yes, there are laborers, but there are also managers managing, the HR managers, they got legal, they got all the professionals that you need to run that small company, they have employed. And when you do get a crunch on cane cutters, they can mechanize. There's no problem with mechanizing in that space to be able to have a machine now that cuts the cane. Now you have a much higher paid person using the machine, a much higher paid person servicing the machine. And so what I'm saying is, but while we have tens of thousands of people out there looking for manual work jobs, to try and force it into the mechanical space is, again, not smart. We need to let that happen naturally, that when the sugar company realizes I'm battling to get cane cutters because there aren't people available, now mechanize. Not for us to force it before the time because we're trying to get the higher paying jobs, is really my view on the matter. But again, what I'm saying is, because we push agriculture, don't underestimate it to be low-paying jobs. We are talking of high-paying jobs, and getting that right mix, being able to make sure people can get employment. Because employment goes around, I can, again, talk for a long time on what that means. It's dignity and all sorts of things that you need in a family. The reason why we're having a lot of gender-based violence is because we don't have jobs in the country. And so the more we can get the jobs fixed, the more a lot of these other knock-on problems we have socially in the country all get fixed in the process. So, he spoke on projects. We need to finish on time and in price, and I think I've touched on that with, in fact, I think he mentioned the ICC, and he is spot on. It is a major problem, but by us moving from the way we contract this work, I believe, is the solution, and it's proving to be the case, and not only what I say. We then have questions from Kango asking about interest and debt repayments going up at an accelerated pace. And again, I fully agree. He's got an extremely good point. It is concerning for me that this year interest went up with almost 1 billion emalangeni. Repayment of debt is one thing. Repayment of debt has got all sorts of, the capital repayments is fine. It's the interest that gives me the absolute heebie-jeebies. How countries, I mean, at the moment, it's getting close to about 3 billion, 3.9 billion, I think, or 3.8 is this year's budget, which means for the first time in history, our interest payments have overtaken our spend on health. Health is 3.4 billion, interest payments is 3.9 billion. So what I'm saying is, as a country, it is really a problem. Many countries, if you add the health and the education, interest is higher than both of those together on the continent. So we're far from there, and we're still in a very healthy space, everyone. But the pace that we are growing is concerning, and we absolutely need to remain on the sustainable path that we are. And please don't underestimate the pressure that there is to break these rules. It's an absolute, lot of my gray hairs is from trying to contain and trying to maintain the sustainable path that we're more or less on. Secondary education. Again, we need to make a decision. Are we going to be focused? And again, many countries have a more socialistic kind of spend. You look at the country next door, Squatlante is the right word. But you find that they've moved very quickly onto a very high social spend as a country. The quicker we move to that space, the less we have to spend on growth. And at the moment, we are trying to say, as much as it is, I can't agree with him more. It would be phenomenal. Parliament was giving me a hard time. It'll be phenomenal to be able to have secondary school also involved in free education. It'll be phenomenal. To be able to lift the elderly grants. I would love to lift the elderly grants and do all these wonderful things that feel so phenomenal to do. But the more we do that, the less we get on growth. The less we get on growth, the less employment we create. The less employment we have, the more poverty we have. Our biggest problems remain unemployment and poverty. And now we can either throw money directly at it, or we can throw money at solving the root problem, which is growth. And we are deciding to say, let's throw money at the root problem, which is growth, and try and when we get the growth right, we get employment right, better jobs, better pay, all the different things. At the same time, that then solves the poverty problem. And that means that people can afford schooling, afford high schools, afford different things. So it's a national direction. We are trying to do what we can on this side, hence we have free primary, elderly grants, these things. But the moment we start throwing huge resources at it, we will absolutely sacrifice on our side. And I can give you many examples of countries that have moved too quickly. When you get to be a high-income country, absolutely. The Norways of the world, there's no problem at all with having a huge spend and almost become a socialistic kind of government. But when you do that soon as a developing country, you face massive risks of not being able to get the growth right that you need. Otherwise, we then had someone from the UN, assistant economist, asking about the allocation to ICT seems too low for what we're doing. He's 100% right. At the moment, this budget does not speak well to that point, but maybe what everyone doesn't know, and we are busy negotiating a big loan from the World Bank for ICT specifically. So a lot of the things that maybe would have been provided for in a budget normally is actually coming in a loan. It'll be tabled within the year with the World Bank. It's been already a lot of work's been done on it, and I believe that'll address that problem exactly, because he is correct. We need to spend more in that ICT space. And how can we better support the private sector in this space? I really believe if ever we've got the right minister to do whatever they can do in the private sector space to get that right, we do have that. Don't know how we're doing time-wise. Program Director, we're still okay. Can I go to some of the Slido questions? Let me touch on a few of those. Honourable Minister, given the recent 12.44 billion allocation, the wage bill and implementation of long-awaited salary reviews, how does the Minister justify maintaining stagnant PAYE brackets and effective clawback of the increase? Bracket creep, I think, is a big problem. And again, I'm just going to be honest here. At the moment, we should have been moving the brackets. Is there something that we should have done? They've been stagnant ever since I've been a minister. The brackets have been stagnant. There is an element of it not being right. But at the same time, it feels, at the moment, we haven't been lifting taxes either. And so it's kind of I know it kind of means you're clawing heavier at the bottom end, but when we tried to lift taxes, when we tried to take the 33% tax bracket to 36%, it failed in Parliament. And so unfortunately, at the moment, we just, in a sense, can't afford to be able to give away too much tax at the moment. And for that reason, bracket creep has absolutely been there. As a government, we do need to consider this in the next year or two. I have to, as a minister, take this on, see what we can do there. Maybe just do something at least, just an indicative something, but it's something that we haven't addressed because we absolutely need the tax to be able to grow the economy and do what we need to do. But it is a very good point and something which we absolutely do take on board. Right, in a certain paragraph, the minister represents expenditure of so much and excluding public debt redemption, 4.9% deficit is understated if you exclude debt repayment as part of your expenditure. So again, these are numbers that are, it's not our way of doing it. I think it's the IMF that decides how exactly one projects this. And I do believe that the 4.9% budget deficit is a direct indicator of that amount in the budget to GDP. That is a reflection. If one adds the interest and the debt repayment, I know it shows another number, but this is we do it the right way according to international standards. And Minister, as university student, I'd like to ask, how does the current national budget address the growing challenges of unemployment among the graduates in Eswatini, and what specific initiatives are being implemented to create employment opportunities for them? If ever, I mean, you would have noticed that a narrative in my whole speech, as I was going, this will provide so many jobs. The next paragraph, this will provide so many jobs. And I wasn't talking, again, like the governor says, I'm not that interested in how many jobs are being created on a temporary basis. I'm interested in how many jobs are going to be provided on a permanent basis. That's the sustainability element. It's not sustainable building a road and saying, wow, we've created 1,000 jobs from building a road. Those jobs are going to end. And that person sometimes is worse off after having a decent salary and now he's got nothing. It's the permanent jobs that we absolutely need to focus on. And in that whole budget narrative, even though I was including something like Mkondo Ngwavuma, that's actually got, and this is a study, it's not that minister is sucking out his thumb, there's 100,000 jobs being created out of that. Now, yes, we're just building the phase 1 at the moment, phase 2 is still coming. But when phase 1 and phase 2 is finished, with the industrial park, and there's like almost a little eco-city that's part of that whole plan, it's 100,000 jobs being created. So, but even amongst all those agriculture ones, there's over 200,000 jobs, which theoretically sorts out our unemployment problem. It takes us from 34% down to 0 if we can do the 200,000 jobs. And so what I'm saying is, as government, we are absolutely, 101 focus is jobs. And so I do really believe that as students coming out, and I know they think, they might have that mindset of, well, it looks like agriculture jobs, it looks like all those little things have the whole spectrum of jobs involved in it every time we open something. Minister, the issue of government arrears is made worse by ministry spending outside the allocated budgets. Will the new system address this? And if how, be resolved as big and plate as SMEs accessing funding? So first of all, absolutely. IFMIS stops any overspending. And that's, I think, why there's a lot of resistance in the system for it, is because you cannot overspend in it. You'll see in this budget, we've also budgeted specifically for areas where we know there's been overspending, because we've sometimes used the budget to try to curtail over expenditure, and not smart. It happens anyway, now I've got over expenditure. You'll see travel, which has always been over. We budgeted this year we had a budget 220 million. In the budget table, I've got a 400 million budget for travel because I know it's going to be 400 million. And I can't make a plan. I can't make a plan in the year. IFMIS does not allow a plan. There's no plan to be made. IFMIS, if there's no budget for it, it doesn't happen. So we had to make sure we've really budgeted correctly to make sure it does happen. And that theoretically should stop arrears, should stop this nonsense of people doing work without proper orders, and that's sometimes where the problem lies. The civil servant says, well, you know what, you're supplying toilet paper, I don't have an order for you, just bring it so long, I'll sort the order out tomorrow. You don't get your order, and now you don't get paid, because the system is not giving you an order. We must have discipline in supplies to make sure you have a government order before supplying, and a lot of these SMEs not being paid problems will be sorted out with that process. Governor, that's what they're responding to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We're almost at the end of our program. May I invite the Deputy Governor to do the closing remarks? Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. It is all a balance. I liked how the Minister said, we need to do this. We still need to do this. So we have to balance. But I also appreciated how you started off by saying we're very, very good at planning and crisis management. I think we need to bring the balance somewhere where we plan, execute, and we don't have to crisis manage. Honorable Minister, my governor, I did not see members of parliament, but in both houses of parliament, if they're present, senior government officials, captains of industry, central bank management and staff, our esteemed panelists, our online participants, all protocol observed, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. I fed you. I gave you food this morning. It is a great honor and a profound appreciation that I stand before you today. My job is very, very simple. It is just to make a few closing remarks it is easier than that of the ministers and our panelists. As we come to the close of our 2026-27 post-budget seminar, an annual event convened by the Central Bank, I'd like to thank you all for showing up. Honorable Minister, this event cannot happen without you. And it is amazing that every time we call, you find a slot in your busy schedule. We appreciate that. Your active participation today and the candid engagement you gave us is truly invaluable. We are deeply grateful for your comprehensive overview of your budget, 2026-27. I remember when Mr. Nati Lamini walked in on Friday, he said, "I love you with agape love." And truly, it reflects that. It's a very, very difficult balance, Minister. This seminar has once again reaffirmed its importance as a vital platform for a robust dialogue and informed analysis. The discussions that we have had have given us meaningful insights into your national budget, Honorable Minister, and I commend you, our panelists, our panel moderator, and the democratic process that went through. We appreciated the difference in how we interacted today. To our esteemed panelists, you were exceptional, and we extend our heartfelt gratitude for your insightful contributions. To my Honorable Minister, that you changed our entire organization and placed yourself as a panel member, we appreciate that. Your diverse perspectives and rigorous analysis have enriched our understanding of the budget's implications and its potential impact on our economy from the different aspects: SACU, energy and markets, SME focus, young people, social engagement. I also extend my sincere thanks to all participants for your active engagement and thoughtful questions and contributions. Your keen interest and probing questions reflect a shared commitment to advancing economic well-being of Eswatini. The dialogue we have had today underscores our collective responsibility to building a resilient and prosperous future. Furthermore, I wish to extend my sincere appreciation to the dedicated staff of the Central Bank of Eswatini. We wouldn't be here today without their organization skills, their focus, and also just guiding the planning. You are an exemplary force of how to plan and execute insightful events. The seamless progress of our discussions today and the high level of engagements we have witnessed are a testament to your unwavering commitment and professionalism. Ladies and gentlemen, the honest and constructive deliberations of this seminar will undoubtedly serve as a compass for the Honorable Minister and his team as they proceed with the implementation of the 2026-27 budget. I think we've also given Minister some notes on how to engage the MPs as they interrogate him through the process. As the Central Bank of Eswatini, we reaffirm our commitment to providing sound policy advice and steadfast support to the government. I echo the words of the Governor. We stand ready to work hand in hand with the Minister of Finance to ensure the successful implementation of the budget and to navigate the economic challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. We are confident that the outcomes of this seminar will contribute meaningfully to the effective execution of the 2026-27 budget, ultimately delivering the benefits to the ordinary person on the street, Leli Swat. Once again, thank you all for your participation and valuable contributions. May God bless you and grant you safe travels as you return to your prospective duties, especially those that are leaving heaven. With these few remarks, I thank you all.